Welcome to a new In the Mail, the series that will touch both your passion for electronics and your bank account at the same time. My first item is this interesting looking USB charger. It has 3 USB ports and a small display to show voltage and current. So let's get it out of the box. I got the one with the European plug. So I'm not sure how useful that feature is going to be for the average user that just wants a charger. But for me in the lab it could be useful for powering various devices and testing them if it proves to be working fine, that feature. So I have a wall outlet here. Let's power it on. So it's nice that the display is masked behind this front plate, and it's actually quite visible. There's no problem. And it was on for about 5 or 10 seconds and then it went off. I'm not sure if that's something to do with the fact that there is no load right now, or maybe it turns on every few seconds. Let me bring a load.
The sponsor of this video is jlcpcb.com, a professional PCB factory which currently has the best offer on the market. You can order 10 PCBs for just $2, so check out their website linked in the description below, because it will probably cost you more to do the PCBs at home.
So this is simply a smartphone that's going to charge from this. So yeah, the voltage went up and we're charging at 2 amps. Let's see how long is this going to stay on. But yeah, it was as I was suspecting. While there is a load, it will turn on, and I think it will stay on as long as you have a load connected. But it's not switching to the voltage again. So I think to see the voltage we need to connect this and it will show the voltage, but then it will switch to current mode. There is no manual in the box, so I suspect that when you first connect the load, it switches back and forth a couple of times between voltage and current, and then it just stays set to current display. I don't think there is any button, any way to control this. Yeah, so if you want to see voltage, you're only going to see voltage when you first connect your load. I often need to see how much a USB device is pulling in terms of current, and if the 5-volt source is sagging or not. Well, this solves the problem of the showing the current, but I don't see a live update of the 5-volt USB rail, and that's a problem because it might be okay when you first connect it, but it might sag later, and I don't think I'll catch that with this display. But I think it looks good, certainly better than what I was expecting for the money. But none of that will matter if this wall adapter is not safe to use or can't meet its spec, which is 3 amps total or 2.4 amps maximum per port. So yeah, I'll have to do a separate video on this to fully test it and do a teardown. I'll maybe even use the insulation tester to test between the primary and the secondary to see if the transformer used inside this is of good quality or not. But if you're interested in getting one of these, it's just $8, and you'll find a link in the description below. My next item is something related to camera gear. So let's take it out. This is one of those quick release systems. It's one of the cheap ones you can find on eBay. The cost was around $6.50. So I don't expect much in terms of quality, but I believe it works by pulling this, yeah, and it will release this mounting plate that you would attach to your camera, and it would stay permanently fixed in there. And to connect it back, I guess you'd need to push that pin. Which works kind of difficult. Yeah, you really needed a lot of pressure to push that pin back in. So I'm not sure how you would use the camera to push that in. I don't think it's safe to do that. Yeah, don't like that. As you see, this pin is, yeah, it's barely moving when it's locked by this mechanism, unless I'm using this wrong. But you see, you open it like this, and then to push it back in, yeah, it kind of catches on the edges, and it's not as smooth as I would like it to be. Maybe if I add some lubrication in there, maybe it will go smoother. I don't know, I have to check this, but it looks like I got what I paid for. I got the cheapest option, and it's not working like... I don't think this is going to make my work any easier. It will probably annoy me because it's hard to use. So please let me know in the comments if you have any experience with these types of devices, and if you have the same problem with this pin, or maybe I'm using it wrong. So yeah, leave a comment below. My next item is also related to recording gear. The box is kind of bashed, but this is what happens with these rather soft boxes when shipped around the world. So you can see the image on the package. This is a flexible mount with a dual head for mounting a phone and a microphone. Let's try to assemble this one to see if I got all the pieces in here. So all the pieces were in here. This is how it looks. This is like a mount for the side of the table, for the edge of the table. Then you have these two goosenecks, which feel okay. They're pretty easy to fix into a position. Then you have one of these plastic mounts for a cell phone. And then on this other gooseneck you have this shock absorption microphone mount. It's pretty cheap, it's plastic, and it has these rubber mounts in here, these rubber bands. So I guess you would insert your microphone in between these rubber bands, and these would ensure some vibration reduction. Then you have this wind filter for the microphone that you can adjust from here. So yeah, it should be useful. I guess it also depends on the length. There's about I don't know, like 40 centimeters of gooseneck cable in here. So yeah, it depends if this length is enough for you. Judging from the presentation photo, I imagine this would be longer, but that's just my perception. I think I'll definitely use it, if not for holding a mic and the smartphone, definitely for holding some lights across my bench. And for the price, honestly, I don't think I can find something better. So this should be pretty good here over my bench. Next item is a roll of cloth tape. You've seen this before in a previous episode, maybe last year, but I've used up that roll entirely while doing some automotive wiring, so I need a new one. This one, I think it's about 20 millimeters wide, and it's okay, but if you're doing some long wire harnesses, and if you just want to apply this on the outside of the harness, you might want to get something smaller, like 10 millimeters, and I have that one on order as well, to allow you to do that wider spiral on the loom. With this one at 20 millimeters wide, you basically end up covering the entire loom in tape. And with a smaller width tape, you will end up with that nice spiral with some uncovered portions left, which might be desirable because that loom will be more flexible and less thick than the one covered entirely in tape. So I highly recommend this type of tape. Get it in a couple of sizes, one which is thinner and one which is thicker like this one, if you're doing any automotive wiring, or you might use it for other purposes as well, but you see this one used a lot in automotive wiring. Next, here is an interesting module that caught my eye on banggood.com, and let's get it out of this nasty bag. This is a lithium battery UPS module. You basically stick the 18650 battery on this module and some external 12 volts power supply, and you get a 12 volts output uninterruptible. If the external power goes off, the module has a built-in DC step-up converter that will take over and boost the output from the battery to 12 volts, so you get that stable 12 volts output no matter what. Similarly, if the battery is removed, the module will switch to the 12 volt external power, and it's even nicer because it's so compact. It's just the size of the 18650 socket. So I will definitely have to do a separate video on this one with a reverse engineering schematic. Until then, if you'd like to order one, there will be a link in the description below. My next module is once again something interesting that caught my eye on Banggood. Let's first get it out of the anti-static bag. This is a speech synthesis module. So you basically connect this module to a microcontroller. You configure it over a digital interface, and you can choose between UART, SPI or I2C, and then you send it speech commands, and it will output those words in English or Chinese, and it can also work the other way around by hearing and decoding speech. But I would suspect that part would not work as well as the output. So I definitely need to do a separate video on this and show you how it works. This should be interesting for those trying to build robots or any kind of automation where you need some voice output or input. So stay subscribed. This video is coming soon. My next item is a mechanical precision indicator. I've seen these used in various videos on the internet, so I decided to get one myself. I know I got the cheap stuff from China, and there are probably much better ones that you can buy, but it should be fine for the stuff I work on. So this dial will indicate a 0.01 millimeter precision on the movement of this pin. You get a mounting hole on the back, so you could attach this to a stand or frame and then have this pin rub against the stuff you need to measure, like for example the flat bed of your 3D printer. And while moving this across that plane, you could measure the warping of the bed at various points. For example, on the big dial, which by the way can also spin, you get a 0.01 millimeter increment, and for each revolution of the big dial you get one step on the small dial, like so. So I'm not sure if I'll ever use this for something serious. I don't do much mechanical work here, but I just thought it would be interesting to have one and play with it. They're fairly inexpensive, around $6 shipped. So yeah, why not? I gave it a try. And our last item for this video is a small signal generator module. Let's get it out of the anti-static bag. This is how the module looks, and we've seen this kind of small signal generator before. Not sure if this one is any better, but from the description it does have some interesting features, like it can go up to 150 kilohertz. I think the user interface is a bit better designed than before. It works from 3.3 volts up to 30 volts, and the output signal level is equal to the voltage input. And on top of that, you also get a serial interface with a few commands to set the frequency and duty cycle over serial. So I imagine you could be using something like this to automate a test jig or some other type of circuit because of this feature that it accepts commands for updating the frequency or reading the set frequency. So let's bring the scope into frame and connect this and see what kind of waveform we get. So here is the generator powered from 5 volts. I think the waveform looks pretty good. It's what is it? A 100 Hertz waveform with a 50% duty cycle. Let's try to increase the duty cycle. Yep, that works nice. Yep, I would say a much better user interface than what I've seen before on these small generators, and it even has velocity sensing on these adjustments. Let's try to increase the frequency. We are now at 2.3 kilohertz. The waveform still looks okay. Let's go up to, let's say, 15 kilohertz. So this is 17 kilohertz. The waveform is pretty much a square waveform. Let's try a higher frequency. Yep, and it's still pretty usable, although you can see some rounding on the rising edge. It's still a pretty usable square wave. You can use this. You can use this to input to your motor driver, LED driver, or whatever project you are working on. Yep, this should be a pretty usable square wave. So I'm pretty happy with how this newer signal generator works. It's a pretty nice module and not very expensive at all. So I can recommend this one. It works better than what I've seen before. That was all for today. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to use the links in the description if you plan to purchase any of the products shown in the video. I'll see you next week.